2020 presidential election coverage starts now. So this is the 538 presidential forecast for 2020, updated 1 minute ago. And this is just prior to that first election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, which is going to probably change the polling quite a bit. And that's due to take place in a few hours. And as you can see, Biden is favored to win the election. As an aside, if you like this video, be sure to hit like, follow, or subscribe. Here you can see a set of Trump victories plotted out here. So if you're a Republican voter, these are the states you're looking to win in order to secure your 270 electoral college votes that you need to win the 2020 election. However, if you're a Democrat voter, the scenarios in which Biden wins the election are plotted out here in blue. And as you can see, and obviously there are many more scenarios that would allow for a Democrat victory, because the Democrats are doing much better in the polls, as we'll see later on. But as you can see, Trump victories basically look like Trump securing the center of the country as well as the South, Texas and Florida in particular. Yeah, that's a feature in common with a lot of these Trump victories that are modeled out, as well as Alaska. But the Democrat victories look like them taking the West Coast, as well as the Northeast, as well as that Rust Belt, and a few states sort of that are contiguous with the West Coast. In many of the models, obviously Arizona, New Mexico, etc. And so here's the latest news, and this is very relevant because there are some debates that are going to occur later tonight. So if you haven't seen the debates or you didn't know about it, tune in. Be sure to tune in. Take a look. Let me know what you thought about the debates. And if you're watching this after the debates, then this will be interesting to see what the polls look like just on the eve of the debates. So the latest news. Tonight marks the first of 3 scheduled presidential debates, and the first real opportunity for Americans that they'll have to see President Trump and Joe Biden face off. The question, of course, is whether the debate will shake things up enough to change the race. So far, it's been pretty stable, and Biden has maintained a fairly sizable lead. But as we've said for a while now, don't count Trump out yet. We're once again partnering with Ipsos to poll how people feel before and after the debates. Going into tonight, our poll finds more respondents are backing Biden, even though they think both candidates stand a good chance of winning the election. Other top-line findings? People are pretty certain they'll vote, but not terribly excited about the candidates, and overall, similar shares have a very favorable view of Trump and Biden. The big difference is a lot more people have a negative opinion of Trump. On Sunday, the New York Times published an investigation into Trump's tax returns, disclosing that his business empire looked to be in dire straits and that he'd paid only $750 in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017. Trump dismissed the Times report as fake news, but the American public finally had some sense of what taxes the president has or hasn't paid. This might hurt Trump's image in the eyes of voters, as his background as a successful businessman has helped him previously. So, just to summarize that, we essentially are going into the debate. It's going to shake things up. They're polling for that. And what's in the news right now, there's always something hot in the news. And what's hot in the news right now is that Joe Biden paid whatever it was, something like $300,000 in federal income taxes, and Donald Trump paid $750. And so that's what's currently being debated. They have a great graph over here, which shows that Biden is favored to win the election. They simulated the election 40,000 times to see who won most often, and the sample of 100 outcomes below gives you a good idea of the range of scenarios that their model thinks is possible. So they simulated the model 100 times with the poll results as they are right now in their model, and in those 100 times Trump won 22 in 100, which I believe is up from what they used to have, which I believe was 21 in 100. And Biden wins 78 in 100 times, which I believe is down from his 79 in 100 times in previous videos that I've done. Most importantly, what you'll see is toward the ends, you see sort of Democrat blowouts where they take the whole country. These are their major, here like they win 480 electoral college votes. And on the far left, you'll see Trump blowouts where he wins like 368 electoral college votes. But as we all know, these scenarios tend to be less likely than just around 270. Now, of course, these scenarios are still likely, as you can see where they've simulated it. But what you really want to be paying attention to if you're a Trump voter or if you're a Democrat voter is if you can just get over the line, okay? Winning a blowout is great. You have to get over the line first. So these ones that are right next to the line show you the scenarios, for example here, that the Democrats could use to just get over the line. That's all you need in order to secure a victory for your candidate. And these dots over here represent Trump scenarios. So let's just briefly go through what a just over the line victory, what you're looking for in a minimal case. Obviously, if you get more, you get every other state, fantastic. But you're looking for, you can very clearly see, the West Coast, the Northeast, the Rust Belt. I think in this one does include Pennsylvania, and the sort of just the shield, behind the West Coast, Nevada, etc. And you can see that's sort of consistent with all of the scenarios where they kind of get over the line, and then predictably as you move this way, they just grab more and more of the country, which is, if that happens, that's great. Equally with Trump, he just grabs more of the country. In the Trump, if you're a Trump voter, what you're looking for is that Trump grabs the majority of the country, but also that he grabs Texas and Florida in particular, sort of the center of the country, and as well when you're moving sort of into the stronger victories, where he's getting, for example, here 291 electoral votes. He's also taking Michigan and Wisconsin, and so that's what you're looking for. You're looking for Florida, Texas, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. That's what Trump victories look like. And if you're a Democrat, you're looking to grab Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, not Florida or Texas necessarily, because those ones look like they're leaning toward the Republican side. What you really need is grabbing Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and if you can do that, then the Democrats win. And so here they have every outcome in their simulations, all possible electoral college outcomes for each candidate, with higher bars showing outcomes that appeared more often in their 40,000 simulations. So you can see they had all these simulations, and a lot of them gave Trump between there's a bump here at around, let's say, 130 electoral college votes, and there's fewer of them that kind of get over the line here. And that's what their models show. And so these ones that don't get over the line are more likely, and those ones that do get over the line are less likely. The Biden one is the opposite. The scenarios which show him getting less than 270 votes are far less likely, and yet there's a lot of scenarios in which he gets more than 270 votes. And there's a peak here at around, let's say, 420 votes or something like that, 419 electoral college votes that he could get, and that has sort of the local maximum of most probability that he gets it. But obviously if you added up the probabilities of these guys, they're more probable in total than the little peak he has here. So this is just the most probable narrow range that you can find anywhere here. And so that's what their system is showing. And as the Fox helpfully points out, more bars to the right of the 270 line means more simulations where that candidate wins. Some of the bars represent really weird outcomes, but you never know. This is a great graph. If you're wondering whether you should stay tuned, you should, because this graph is fantastic. This is the winding path to victory, and it says that states that are forecasted to vote for one candidate by a big margin are at the ends of the path, while tighter races are in the middle, and bigger segments mean more electoral college votes. And so you can trace the path from either end to see which state could put one candidate over the top. So for those of you who aren't like math oriented, I'll put it in a very simple way. You guys know that there's sort of very strongly Democrat states, like for example the District of Columbia. Here the forecasted vote share, as you can see, for Biden is 90.8% of the votes against Trump's 5.8%. So Trump will only win 5.8% of DC. And those of you sitting at home know this. You know that there are states that just, a particular party just cannot win because the states are so heavily in favor of one party. Equally, Nebraska's 3rd district and Wyoming have Trump at a forecasted vote share of between 68.4% to 72.4% of that particular district. So if you're a Democrat, you know that you can't take Wyoming, and that's good. Now, these are on the ends of each of the graph. Okay, so these ends the Republicans aren't looking to take. This end the Democrats aren't looking to take. The width of these things, for example, Texas, big width, right? That's because it gives you 38 electoral votes. And Florida, again, gives you 29. And Illinois gives you 20, and so they're bigger. And of course, you need 270 electoral votes to win. So you want, ideally, you want a lot of very big states, states like New York, states like Virginia, Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas. Where's California? There's California right there, with 55 electoral college votes. So if you had a lot of little states, like this Nebraska's first district, you might not win, whereas a few very large states would get you over the line. So if you're a political person and then what you're thinking is, can we turn those states in our direction? So if you're blue, you want to turn the states that are just over 270, like particularly over here. You want to turn them blue, and you want to keep the states just over here. You want to keep those blues. You want to guard here, and you want to attack here. If you're a Republican, then you want to guard these states. Currently they're showing that they're not being guarded, but if you are a Republican, you want to take Ohio, North Carolina, Maine 2nd District, Florida, Arizona, Nebraska's 2nd District, and Pennsylvania. And you want to attack here. You want to, and apologize for my sort of board game language. I'm just trying to explain it in a simple way. You want to take Wisconsin, Nevada, New Hampshire, Michigan, etc. But what the coloring of the state shows is that the Democrats have all of these states, but that doesn't get them to 270. With Wisconsin, they get pretty close. But once they get Pennsylvania with its 20 electoral votes, they get over the 270 line and they win the 2020 presidential election. If they then get, which the polling and this 538 model shows that they will, Nebraska's 2nd District for whatever it was, 1 electoral vote, Arizona for 11 electoral votes, Florida for 29 electoral votes, Maine 2nd District for 1 electoral vote, North Carolina for 15 electoral votes, and Ohio for 18 electoral votes. If they get all that, well, then they're way above the line. So not only have they won, but they control the Senate pretty strongly. Oh, sorry, not only have they won, but they've won by a huge amount as well. Now, and therefore would control the Senate pretty strongly. Now, so if you're sitting there and let's say you're a Democrat who thinks, well, what chance then does the Republicans have if they have to grab all of these states just to get to 270? Well, the answer is that a lot of Republicans think there's a silent vote, and therefore the poll or the forecasting that someone like 538 does, which shows these states to be light blue. For example, let's take a state like Arizona. Okay, Arizona has Trump at 48.3% of the popular vote, Biden at 50.4% of the popular vote. So a Trumpster thinks that Arizona is already for Trump because there's a few people who aren't telling the pollsters the correct idea, and so these sorts of very light, very small. Look at Pennsylvania. Trump at 47.2% of the vote against Biden at 52.1%. The Trump guys are looking at them as already in the bag for Trump because, not in the bag, but they're pretty close, and they think it's closer than what the polls say, and they think with Trump campaigning in these states, especially with this debate that's coming up very soon, that he can then grab all of these guys. So, they're looking to maintain these from their perspective, and then grab, hopefully, Wisconsin, Nevada, New Hampshire, that sort of a thing. I think that's probably where the imagination for 2020 for the Republicans ends. Actually, no, it ends about here, Michigan and Minnesota. So Minnesota, right there. So between Minnesota and Ohio, that's the entire battleground for Republicans. And between Minnesota and Ohio is the entire defense ground, as it were, that the Democrats are looking to keep as per this model. And so, again, to be very clear, the battle for this 2020 election and who wins is going to happen in Ohio with its 18 electoral votes, in North Carolina with its 15 electoral votes, in Florida, in Maine 2nd District, in Arizona, in Nebraska's 2nd District, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Nevada, in New Hampshire, in Michigan, and Minnesota. Some of you would take umbrage with me saying New Hampshire, but broadly speaking, that's what's going to happen. So it's a very useful map. This is the map that you're looking at if you're looking to see, is my candidate going to win? And they have this great map over here, which is called tipping points, and then states ordered by how likely they are to deliver the decisive vote in the Electoral College. This is a little bit harder to understand, but basically the states that, when they say, there's an expression, as Florida goes, so goes the country. I don't know if you've heard that expression. I know it's an expression in Texas. I'm not sure if it's one in Tennessee. No, I'm joking. That's the expression that as Florida goes, so goes the country. So they're saying that these are the states most likely that if they change their mind, that might tip over the election in one direction or another. So these are those swing states that could change everything. So these are the ones you want to keep your ears glued to, as it were. Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Ohio, North Carolina, Minnesota, Nevada, Colorado, Georgia, New Hampshire, Virginia, and Texas. And I suppose the percent they're giving here is clearly not the forecasted vote share differential. It's the percent chance that that state alone changing its mind could tip over the whole election. So Pennsylvania, there's a 31% chance that if it changes its mind, so goes the country. Obviously, Pennsylvania is blue right now. So what they're saying is, if Pennsylvania goes to the Republican Party, again, the forecasted vote share is 47.2% for Trump against 52.1% for Biden. But if it goes to the Republicans, there's a 1 in 3 chance that the Republicans then win the Electoral College and win the 2020 presidential election. Whereas with Florida, if it goes to the Republicans, there's an 11% chance that that also means that the Republicans win the 2020 presidential election. So if you're a Democrat, you're paying attention to Pennsylvania, you're paying attention to Florida, to Wisconsin, to Michigan. Those are the big ones. And if you're a Republican, you're saying, if I can grab Pennsylvania, that's a 1 in 3 chance that my candidate wins the 2020 election. If I get Florida, that's another 10%, so that's a 40% chance. Wisconsin and Michigan, that puts it at 50 and 60. So you can grab Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, Michigan. Trump now has a 60% chance. That has a 60% chance of now having won the election for Trump. So previously we said very strong chance for the Democrats, but if those 4 states go, Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, Michigan, the odds have now flipped over. There's now a 60% chance that actually it's not going to the Democrats now. It's now going to Trump. So, and then whereas these have less than 1% of the chance of being the tipping point. So if they turn, first of all, they're unlikely to turn, like California with Biden at 64% of the vote against Trump's 33.9. But if they did, it's unlikely to change the election, probably because, let's say California. If California went Republican, then you know that all these other states would have had to go Republican first, because California is so heavily Democrat that it's highly unlikely to go Republican. So if that tips over, it's only at the end of all of these states tipping over. Equally, the same would be true of somewhere like Wyoming, which is very Republican. That's not going to go Democrat unless all the other Republican states tip over. So again, these states have a very low chance of actually tipping over the election one way or the other. The U.S. Senate has Democrats slightly favored to win. They've got a forecast over there. And then they have this useful little graph here, how the forecast has changed. So it says the forecast updates at least once a day whenever we get a new poll. Click the buttons to see the ways in which each candidate's outlook has changed over time. So they have the chance of winning, and you can see that the Democrats have always maintained a very consistent lead over the Republicans. But if we go back to June 1st, the Democrats had a 70 in 100 chance of winning against the Republicans' 30 in 100 chance of winning. That then exploded toward sort of June 26th, where the Democrats had almost an 80 in 100 chance of winning against the Republicans' 21 in 100 chance of winning. That probability then narrowed, and by the time we hit around September 1st, the Democrats were sitting at around a 69 in 100 chance of winning against the Republicans' 31 in 100 chance of winning. But that probability has since expanded again, and the Democrats are now sitting at a 78 in 100 chance of winning against the Republicans' 22 in 100 chance of winning. In terms of electoral votes, you can see that back in June, the Democrats were forecasted to win about 323 electoral votes against the Republicans' 215. Obviously, you need 270. There's 270 right there, between 250 and 300. And you need that to win the Electoral College. So the Democrats have consistently maintained a lead above that 270 line in all of their models, and that they're constantly sort of tipped to win the presidential election in 2020. However, what's happened over time is that the forecasted vote share has changed, and what we're now sitting at currently is 331 votes forecasted to go toward the Democrats against 207 votes forecasted to go toward the Republicans. And you need 270 votes to win, and so that's what we're sitting at right now. And again, we started at sort of 324 to 214, so now we're at 331 to 207, so remarkably consistent. And here's the popular vote again, same story. In June, Joe Biden was sitting with about 52.5% of the popular vote against Donald Trump's 46.2% of the popular vote, and currently Joe Biden is sitting at 52.7% of the popular vote against Donald Trump's 46% of the popular vote, and so remarkably consistent. But again, the popular vote won't necessarily determine the presidency. How is that possible? For those of you who don't know, there are certain states with massive populations, for example, California. And let's assume a case, which isn't true, but let's assume it. If California had more population than the entire rest of all the other states combined, in theory, if every single voter voted for somebody in California, let's say they all voted for Joe Biden, then no matter if the entire rest of the United States voted for Donald Trump, in the popular vote share, Joe Biden would win. But as we know, each state has a certain number of electoral votes, and so if all of his voters were in this imagined supermassive California, then he would just win the Electoral College votes of California, and he would not win all the other Electoral College votes. So in that case, he'd have won the popular vote because he got this massive state called California in this example, but he lost to the Electoral College. And so the way the Electoral College is set up, the popular vote is not necessarily correlated with who wins the Electoral College, and who wins the Electoral College is who wins the presidency in 2020. And finally, they conclude with some weird and not so weird possibilities. So it's just sort of the chances that these situations will crop up. Trump winning the popular vote, regardless of whether he wins the Electoral College, they give it an 11 in 100 chance. Biden winning the popular vote, regardless of whether he wins the Electoral College, they give it an 89 in 100 chance. So there's an 89 and 100% chance that he does win the popular vote, regardless of whether he wins the Electoral College or not. So he's heavily tipped to win the popular vote. The question is whether he wins the Electoral College. Trump wins more than 50% of the popular vote, regardless of whether he wins the Electoral College, 8 in 100 chance. Biden winning more than 50% of the popular vote, regardless of whether he won the Electoral College, 84 in 100 chance. Trump winning in a landslide, defined as winning the popular vote by a double-digit margin. He has a less than 1 in 100 chance of doing that. Biden winning in a landslide, defined as winning the popular vote by a double-digit margin. He has a 28 in 100 chance of winning in a landslide. Trump winning the popular vote but losing the Electoral College, less than 1 in 100 chance, and that's because the states that he's running in aren't necessarily the most populous states. However, if he wins them, he wins the Electoral College. That doesn't mean he wins the popular vote. So it's harder for Trump to win the popular vote than it is for him to win the Electoral College. The opposite is true with Biden. Biden winning the popular vote but losing the Electoral College is an 11 in 100 chance, rather. And that's because Biden's popularity are in very populous states like New York, California, etc., Washington State. So it's much more likely that he wins the popular vote. The question is whether he wins the Electoral College. No one winning the Electoral College, that is, no candidates getting 270 electoral votes, and Congress therefore deciding the election, has a less than 1 in 100 chance of happening. Trump winning at least one state that Clinton won in 2016, a 37 in 100 chance. I think that's gone up from what I saw last. And Biden winning at least one state that Trump won in 2016, 91 in 100 chance. So it's almost guaranteed that Biden will win back some states from what we saw in that 2016 map. And I'll go to that just to remind you. Here's the 2016 map, where Trump won 360 Electoral College votes against Clinton's 232. That's the 270 line that you need to win. That's the excess Electoral College votes that Trump won over and above what he was required to win in the 2016 election. And the reason he won all of this is because he did get Wisconsin, he did get Michigan, he did get Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, and Arizona. And so that was what happened in the 2016 presidential election. And if we go back here, they then say the map staying exactly the same as it was in 2016, less than 1 in 100 chance, and the election hinging on a recount where candidates are within half a percentage point or in one or more decisive states, is a 5 in 100 chance according to their model. So who's ahead in the national polls? Their model relies mainly on state polls, which it combines with demographic, economic, and other data to forecast what will happen on election day. If you want to see a snapshot of what voters are thinking right now, with no fancy modeling, check out the national polls. And they have their national polling averages. Finally, they list the states with the closest races, the nail-biting states where, it could go either way, and that's Ohio, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Arizona, Iowa, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So this race basically hinges on Ohio, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Arizona, Iowa, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and if you did, give it a like, follow, or subscribe, and thanks so much for watching.